Are we alone in the universe? I mean, it's pretty much the biggest question we can ask, right? But how do you take a question that huge and turn it into, well, science? Today, we're diving into the one equation that tries to give us a real framework for figuring that out.
So to get started, I want you to picture this. It's a late summer night, and an astronomer is sitting at the Big Ear Radio telescope, just listening. He's part of a project called SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and on this one particular night, something completely unexpected happens.
For exactly 72 seconds, a signal blasts through the static. It's not just noise. It's clean, it's powerful, and it looks exactly like the kind of intentional beacon they've been searching for. The astronomer, Jerry Amon, is so floored that all he can do is circle the printout and scribble "wow" in the margin. And you know what? To this day, nobody has ever fully explained what that signal was.
That one fleeting signal really highlights the enormous challenge we're up against. The universe is just mind-bogglingly vast. We now know there are probably trillions of planets in our galaxy alone. So, with that much cosmic real estate, where do you even start to calculate the odds? How do you organize the search in a way that makes any sense?
Well, that's exactly where astronomer Frank Drake comes in. Way back in 1961, he came up with an equation. And the goal wasn't to get a magic number, a final answer. The goal was to break this impossibly huge question down into smaller, more manageable pieces. It's often called a framework for ignorance, which I love, because it's a way of organizing everything we don't know.
And here it is, in all its glory, the Drake equation. Now, it might look a little intimidating, but the idea behind it is actually pretty straightforward. You just multiply these 7 different factors together, and what you get is n, a rough estimate of how many civilizations might be out there in our galaxy, right now, that we could talk to. So let's break this down piece by piece.
Okay, so the equation starts really big. Our star is simply the rate that new stars are being born in the Milky Way. You can think of it as the number of new chances for life to get started every single year. It's kind of the foundation for everything else. Next up, FP. Now, for decades, this was a total guess. I mean, we could see the planets in our own little solar system, but were we a weird fluke, or was this common? We had no idea. But then, then everything changed. Thanks to NASA's Kepler Space Telescope, this variable is not a mystery anymore. Kepler was basically a planet-hunting machine, and what it found was absolutely revolutionary. We now know that most stars have planets. And get this, the data suggests that about 1 in every 5 stars has an Earth-like planet, a world that's in the right spot to have liquid water. Just incredible. So that leads us to MENDI, which I like to call the Goldilocks factor. This is the average number of planets per star that are in that sweet spot, the habitable zone. Not too hot, not too cold, but just right for life as we know it. And thanks to Kepler, we can estimate there are literally tens of billions of these Earth cousins right here in our galaxy. Billions of potential homes for life. All right, now we're moving into much shakier territory. These next 3 are the biological and cultural hurdles. First, FC. On all those nice habitable planets, how often does life actually get started? Then, FI. Once you have life, how often does it evolve intelligence? And finally, FC. How often does that intelligent life build something we can actually detect, like a radio telescope? For these, we only have one data point. Us. Earth. Which makes them huge, huge unknowns right in the middle of the equation. And that brings us to the final variable. And this one is the most mysterious, the most debated, and honestly, you could argue it's the most important factor in the entire equation. It's the one that kind of turns the telescope around and points it right back at us. L stands for longevity. So, how long does a technological civilization last? It's not about how long a species survives, it's about how long it's actively pumping out signals we could detect. Once you invent radio, how long do you stick around? 100 years? A million? And this single variable is where the estimates just explode in different directions. You have optimists like Carl Sagan, who argued that L could be huge, millions of years maybe, which could mean there are a million civilizations out there. But then you have the pessimists who point to the Fermi paradox, where is everybody? And they argue that L might be heartbreakingly short. And because L isn't a fraction like the others, its value completely dominates the final answer. If L is small, N is small, period.
And this forces us to ask a really tough question about ourselves. We invented radio about 100 years ago. Not long after, we invented weapons that could wipe us off the planet. Some call this our technological adolescence, this incredibly dangerous, critical bottleneck. Are we going to be wise enough to get through it? So you see, L isn't just some abstract number. It's a mirror. It's asking us about our own chances of survival.
And here's a wild modern twist to think about. If a civilization does survive for millions of years, there's a good chance its dominant intelligence isn't biological anymore. I mean, think about it. As we're developing AI right here on Earth, it seems totally possible that any signal we finally hear could be from a post-biological artificial civilization. And since machines don't really have to worry about things like pandemics or asteroids, their L value could be, well, almost infinite.
So this whole equation, with all its unknowns, leads to a very real and very heated debate that's happening right now. Should we just be passively listening for signals, that's what we call SETI, or should we be actively broadcasting messages out into the cosmos, that's METI, or Messaging Extraterrestrial Intelligence?
Probably the most famous argument against shouting into the void came from the late, great Stephen Hawking. He warned that an advanced civilization might see us the way we see bacteria. Or worse, they might see us as a planet full of resources ripe for the taking. Announcing ourselves, he argued, could be catastrophically naive.
So the case for just listening, for passive SETI, is really all about caution. You know, the first do no harm principle. Why would we take such a massive risk? It's an approach that admits we're the new kids on the cosmic block, and we have absolutely no idea who or what else is out there. The smart play might be to just listen and learn for a while before we start screaming hello. But there's a really compelling counterargument. People who support active messaging basically say, look, the horse has already left the barn. Our old TV shows, our radio signals, they've been leaking out into space for almost a century now. We're already a bugle of noise expanding out into the galaxy, so maybe it's too late to hide anyway. And if that's the case, why not send an actual intelligent message? It might be the only way to get a reply. Okay, let's put the debate aside for a moment. Let's just imagine it actually happens. A signal is found, it's confirmed, it's intelligent, it's not from here. What happens the next day? How does life on Earth change forever? Well, the impact would be nothing short of historic. Think about it. When Copernicus showed us we weren't the center of the universe, that changed everything. When Darwin showed us we weren't separate from the animal kingdom, that changed everything. This discovery would be on that level. It would prove we are not the only minds in the cosmos, and that would force a total recalibration of our place in, well, everything.
Now, contrary to what you see in the movies, experts don't think there would be mass panic. On day one, yeah, it'd be the biggest news story ever, but you'd still have to go to work. But then, over time, the change would be profound. Science would pivot. We'd see massive global collaboration to study the signal. Within a decade, that knowledge would seep into our art, our music, our philosophy. And within a century, knowing we're not alone would just be a fundamental part of being human, like knowing the Earth goes around the sun.
And this, for me, is the most powerful takeaway of all. The search for ET is, in a way, a search for hope for ourselves. Because if we get a signal from a civilization that's thousands or millions of years old, it's proof. It's proof that a species can survive its technological adolescence. It's proof that it's possible to grow old, that somebody else figured out how to do it.
So, in the end, the Drake equation doesn't give us a number. It's not supposed to. What it gives us is a mirror. It's a map of what we know and what we desperately need to find out about stars, planets, life, and ultimately about ourselves. It shows us that this grand cosmic search is really just a way of understanding our own journey. And it leaves us with a real question, which isn't just are we alone, it's what kind of ancestors do we want to be?